Hey Tanya, how you doing?
Good. How are you
That's
doing?
good. Hanging in there. Long week. So
Mm.
uh oddly enough, my news feed is just full of movie stuff. I don't know why. Uh, I saw now Charisse Theron. Uh People are tossing her name around to be possibly the next James Bond.
Oh, really? Oh,
Yeah,
probably because she did Atomic Blonde, I bet.
probably. I imagine that's why they might consider her for it, but
Hmm.
it's still an interesting. I mean, I could see it. She could pull it off. I mean,
Yeah,
Atomic Blonde didn't exactly have the greatest script, but it was still fun. I thought.
it was fun. Yeah.
You know, I think people. I really think people forgot to have fun.
Yeah, I felt the same way. It's just a fun action film.
Yeah, and then yeah, because I think it also stems from Idris Elba saying that the next Bond should be African American or a woman. So
Um,
to
I
which
thought I thought he was possibly being considered at one point.
there were his name was batted around, which I'd watch that.
Yeah. Yeah, I think it'd be great.
I love Idris Elba. He's one of those actors where if I know he's in it, I'll watch the film. Like,
Oh, okay.
I'm like, yeah, you know what, I'm in. So, and
What
then
did you think of the Gunslinger movie that came out?
he was the best part of it. I had issue. I don't know. I felt really rushed, and
Yeah.
the dialogue hurt. Actually, some of the
Yeah.
dialogue was really. I was like, I should be enjoying this film more, but I'm just like, this is, it felt like what I think it first intended to be was the pilot to a series, you know,
Oh, okay.
because there had been talks, but it wasn't really. I don't remember if it was truly confirmed or not, but had been talks that there would be the movie and then there would be the series,
Mm,
but the movie tanked,
mm-hmm,
and I don't know if the series is still in development hell or where it is. So,
mm-hmm.
but I am excited that Bill and Ted's is getting another movie though.
Me too. I feel like that's gonna be it can't be anything but, more of the same.
Yeah,
Like how are they gonna mess that up? It has to be it has to be just more of the same.
and it's one of those two where I'm reading about what they plan, and the more I'm actually interested. They got William Sadler back as Death,
That's cool.
which is cool because he was one of the best parts of Bogus
Mm-hmm.
Journey. And then they talked about they're going to acknowledge Rufus. They're not recasting George Carlin's character at all
Okay,
out of respect
that's
for
good.
him, but they are going to acknowledge it. And apparently, his absence is going to play a part in the plot. So,
Oh, okay. Interesting.
yeah,
Okay.
and for me, I mean, like, I'm a huge, when it comes to Keanu Reeves, I'll watch it. He's one of those actors, and then you read about those great stories of him in, you know, in the real world, you know,
Mm-hmm.
Keanu Reeves, here he is, he rides the bus. Here's this guy who was in these blockbuster films and he just takes the bus and helps people out. And I'm just like, yeah, I'll watch him in anything. So, hi, Kara.
Hi.
Glad you could join us.
Yeah, dawdled a bit since I had my evening walk and then yoga and shower, but
Oh
I made
no,
it.
I appreciate it. No, I appreciate it quite a bit. So, yeah, I don't hold it too tight a schedule. It's not like these are broadcast live anyway. So, if you have to be a little late or whatnot, usually we're all right. So, uh, but yeah, since we got the gang here, we'll get going shortly. And yes, because of this movie, I know you were only an extra, Tanya, but we're going to ask you a little bit about the new one. So,
Okay.
uh,
Technically, I wasn't supposed to be there as an extra because because I'm American and it was filmed in Canada and I didn't have a work visa. So I
well, then
wasn't
if it's going to get you in trouble, we won't talk about it. I don't want to
I
be
wasn't
so
legally supposed to be there. But I was on set. I was on set in officially in official capacity as part of the bloodshed as in a reporter capacity.
Oh, sure.
So I was on set all day doing that, and I did. We all went and were extras in a scene at the end of the night. And I can maybe talk around that or something like that.
Yeah, or just maybe what it seemed like on set. So
yeah,
so we're probably going to touch just a little bit on that.
Okay.
So yeah, we'll get going here. I don't know if we go too late tonight. I'll try to keep it to an hour here, so
okay,
or so, because I know everybody is busy. So yeah, we'll get rolling here. Yes, my friends, we've traveled down the road back to Cronenberg, the special spoiler room here. Welcome to Cronenberg, and we are continuing our look at the works of Mr. David Cronenberg. And tonight we are visiting Rabid. Yes, his feature film follow-up to Shivers. And tonight I've got a great crew back. Unfortunately, we are sans Dawn. I wanted to try to get Dawn back as well, but at the little bit ago, she told me she was still not feeling a little under the weather and that, so she wasn't able to make it. So you are with us in spirit, Dawn. But tonight I do have two very talented individuals with me tonight to talk about this. They were talking about Shivers last month, and this month they're back. First off, we have Kara with us once again. Hello, Kara. How are you?
Doing okay.
Glad to have you back to talk more David Cronenberg. Appreciate you coming on the show into the spoiler room. And next to Tanya, we have filmmaker extraordinaire, all around very talented person. She wears many hats as well. It is Tanya Atomic. Hello, Tanya. How are you?
Hello, I'm doing good. How are you?
I'm doing well. Thank you for joining us. And yes, tonight we are going to talk about Rabid from 1977. And Tanya, did you want to give a little bit of the summary of Rabid?
Sure. So Rabid is about a woman who gets in a motorcycle accident with her, I believe, boyfriend, and the nearest hospital, clinic, whatever, is a plastic surgery, sort of like a breakthrough with upcoming technology, plastic surgery kind of resort center. And she's suffering severe burns and some other injuries, and so they don't want to send her to the hospital where the travel would be too long. So they perform this surgery on her and then do like skin grafts and stuff with their new technology with plastic surgery to kind of repair the burn. And she develops this sort of parasitic type organism that needs to devour blood, and it changes her where she can't eat real people food. She has to eat people as food. And then it also creates or it also sort of transmits this virus to the people that she feeds on, and they become these rabid biters of people, killers of people, and it becomes an epidemic.
Yep, that that does sum it up. What's interesting right away that caught me after watching it again and doing this show is the fact that this really felt a lot similar to Shivers as far as what he was talking about with sexuality and let's face it, sexually transmitted diseases. I mean, Tanya, did you feel that way as well? That I mean, watching this film, especially after watching Shivers, it really feels like almost like a sequel in many ways.
Yeah, there were similarities to Shivers, and I never, like, before doing the Shiver show and then this show and seeing them so close together, I didn't see how similar it was until recently. It's similar in a way, like like with Shivers, it's sort of a like body snatcher type idea where a parasite goes into your body and takes you over and you're a different person. And this one's kind of like a vampiric parasite is inside you. In Shivers, there's the sexuality to it where it uses the sexuality to transfer the actual parasite.
Right.
And the fear, a lot of the fear in that one is with sexual assault. Oh. And in this one, it was like it doesn't. There's not so much the sexual assault, but it's like it's like the carrier or whatever uses sexuality as a lure, and then assaults you, just plain assaults you. But there is that aspect of sexuality in it.
There is quite a bit, and I think that might have had to do a little bit with the casting as well with this. Cara, how about you? Did you feel that there were a lot of similarities between this one and Shivers?
I definitely got that sense watching it, especially watching them so close together. What I liked more about this one is they kind of ease you into the story a little bit, because you get to see the setup with the van and the motorcycle crash, so you know what's going to happen. Whereas with Shivers, it's basically a slap in the face just right from the opening scene, where you've got this perv chasing someone around and then murders them.
Yeah, this one they do. He does set it up better. I agree. The whole opening in the beginning with the motorcycle accident justifying her, going to the plastic surgery clinic, this breakthrough clinic, which, we have a little something going on here, though, a statement about practicing, medical practices, experimenting on people that might not be approved. Because we get that scene where they take her to the beginning and they're talking about, oh, we're going to do a new plastic surgery technique where we're grafting it, but we're doing this new technique, and she's going to have to be with us for quite some time. And she's actually with them like a month before she actually comes to it all. And the boyfriend, he got injured as well, but he's not as important anyway. So he isn't. I mean, he's just kind of there, he's kind of a oh, Cara, you have a little bit of something rubbing, I don't know, on the microphone possibly.
Oh, sorry.
No, it's okay. Just picked up a little bit there. But yeah, the boyfriend is just like, he's just there. I'm like, he's there kind of to move you through, I think, the rest of the world, because most of it's told from the perspective of Rose, who is being played by Marilyn Chambers, who I'm sure many people are familiar with the name out there. Cara, what did you think of the casting of Marilyn Chambers in a mainstream horror film?
I think it worked out very well, especially because it comes back to the whole vampiric quality and sexuality, and it's obvious that she's a person who's very comfortable with her body, so she navigates very easily through the role, which I mean, especially, for her, it's probably no big deal, the fact that she has quite a bit of topless scenes. But I like that play that they kind of did with, there's something wrong with her when she gets out of her surgery, and it's not really quite sure how it is that she's attacking people. Like, is it her chest? And then you find out it's her underarm. And I kind of like that whole, that vampire reference as well, kind of like how the whole teeth puncturing is basically penetration, whereas she has this penis-like appendage that shoots out of her arm and attacks people.
Yeah, you wouldn't expect it to be under the arm, though once again, we have David Cronenberg doing the makeup for it to look like a specific orifice of the body. But at the same time, yeah, you don't expect it to be under the arm, and you don't get that hint at first. You just know when she embraces them, suddenly people seem to die or get infected. And I like that approach with her character. Tanya, how about you with Rose, Marilyn Chambers casting, and how they handled her character?
I really enjoyed her in this. I thought she did a great job, and I feel like she has this sort of like duality to her. She has sort of an innocent quality, and at the same time, sort of like a lustful quality too. That sort of translates into the character really
Mhm.
well, because the character is that. I mean, she walks through the movie attacking and killing people, but also she kind of doesn't realize she's doing it at the same time in a way, or she's in denial. I'm not sure. But yeah, I think it works really well, and I really enjoy her in this film.
Yeah, I mean, I think she does fantastic in here. Especially, she hadn't done many films up till now, although she did do a couple adult ones, and including the infamous Behind the Green Door, which I looked up an interview. She's actually got a fascinating story of how she got involved in that. But that casting, she's known, so they kind of worked her in there. But she puts a lot of work into this role, and she pulls it off. I mean, there's a stereotype of actresses who come from a certain genre of film. When they try to hit mainstream, there's a bit of a stigma, or they can't act. But Marilyn in here, yeah, she does that perfect duality. I love how she was able, with her face, to go from someone who seemed perfectly innocent, and then she'd get a little curl in her smile or something, and all of a sudden, oh, it's like, well, this guy's done for, or this girl's done for. It's like, she plays it well throughout, and apparently, originally Cronenberg wanted Sissy Spacek for the
Wow.
role, but the studio said no because they didn't like her accent. Go figure. Hollywood. Which is kind of funny, because there's a one scene in here where Marilyn's walking down, Rose is walking down the street, and there's a Carrie poster behind her. But yeah, apparently he wanted, but Ivan Reitman suggested Marilyn Chambers because he knew she was looking to try to get into mainstream film. And so they cast her, and I thought it was an excellent casting for her. She does fantastic in here as Rose, and then we've got some familiar faces from Shivers back as well, making the Cronenverse, as I was thinking of. I'm like, you could easily put this in with Shivers. But yeah, I liked how it kind of grew too in scope, as far as her effect on people, how she was infecting people with drawing blood from them if she didn't kill them, and the scope that kind of grew from it. Tanya, what do you think of the scope of where this goes? I mean, you've probably seen the film, a number of times over the years, but when you first see this or whatnot, you don't kind of expect it to go really apocalyptic.
Right. Yeah, when it starts out, I mean, there's similarities, in the other film, it takes place all in the one building.
Right.
And that's how I kind of thought that this would start. The first time I saw this, the first time I saw Rabid, I thought that's how it was going to start. They're at this facility.
Right.
But then they leave the facility, and then there's the diner, and then it just gets larger and larger till they're at like a mall, and then it affects, a larger area. And I just thought that was pretty cool, how that's unexpected. And also how it shows kind of the virus, because we're kind of following the story of the virus.
Right.
And it just shows, okay, now it's getting here, and then the next step is like, it's going to be even larger. And it's coming for you next.
The evil transmitted infection, which, yes, if you don't get the impression that, yes, he is talking about sexually transmitted disease in this film, you're really missing it. That imagery in that. But Kara, did you like how it kind of was in a larger scope than Shivers?
I definitely, I did like that a lot more, especially kind of like the whole, it does seem a lot more severe than it really was, even though it was just maybe like this small town that got quarantined, but it spread so quick. And the fact that the victims seem zombie-like just kind of, I don't know, adds to like the subconscious severity of it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it increases. You think that it's going to be just at the plastic surgery place or the small town, because she goes to the barn with the cow, and she gets the cow, which doesn't seem to was indifferent. It's like, oh yeah, okay, you're going to drain my blood. Yeah, I'm a cow. because she's hiding in the barn. But what I found interesting were her victims, because her first couple were actually innocents. But as she moves along, her victims aren't really, until we get to her final victim, which was her best friend. Uh, what did you think, Kara, of the victims that she had in here? Do you think he was maybe kind of making a few statements about these individuals? Because you get the creepy guy in the barn, you get the guy who picks up the hitchhike, she's hitchhiking, and the guy in the theater. I mean, what do you think of her victims, and did you think they just get more and more creepy as they go along, or?
I hadn't even considered it from the whole creep factor. I was kind of thinking about it more from like more the concept of like this whole film being kind of like a masked porno, because you have all of these fantasy elements, like you have like the barn romp, you have the scene in the jacuzzi, then you have that whole thing with the trucker, which, I mean, they, especially with how much they travel, you imagine they pick up a lot of people.
Yeah, I've known a couple truckers. I've heard stories. But yeah, now that you mention it, sure, yeah, it could be the whole, each one of those situations, especially after yeah, even when she's in the plastic surgery, those are kind of fantasy situations that you associate with some male fantasies, picking up the girl in the dirty, who likes dirty movies like you, and and the guy, the hitchhiker, and that. Tanya, what would you say? Would you say that these are situations maybe that he's playing with as far as the male fantasy, only they don't go the way you would expect them to?
I would think so, yeah, because there is sort of an element of, I mean, it gets more and more predatory type situations, I feel like. And so you can look at it that way, definitely. And then, but with the twist. But I also think if you look at it from maybe her character point of view as well, it goes from, at the beginning, she doesn't really know what she's doing. So she just hits, whoever's available. And then she knows she needs to feed. So she's kind of being, in a clumsy situation. But then after that, it's like she starts to kind of understand a little bit more what's going, and she starts to go deliberately after a certain type of person.
Right.
It seems like, because once we get to the end, when she's with her friend, she doesn't want to go after her friend. She wants to go out to lure someone more unsavory, who might deserve it more in her mind. So there's also that element as well, if you're looking at it character wise.
Yeah, she does. I don't know, maybe if it's her consciously, or maybe we do have a little bit of element of Shivers in here, where the appendage or thing that's grown from her armpit takes over her brain a little bit.
Yeah.
Is making the choice for her. That's why you get that kind of flip in her facial expressions a bit occasionally, especially when she's about to feed, and it's just like, yeah, this guy's in for it. You're in trouble, dude. So what did you think of the infection, and how they kind of had the outside world handling the infection? Kara, did you get, I don't know if you're familiar with the Crazies, the original The Crazies. Did you get maybe a little bit of the Crazies vibe from that, with how they were handling the infection and the portrayal of the government officials in that?
That hadn't even occurred to me, which is ironic, because I do consider The Crazies to be very much a bio horror, even though it's Romero. But I don't know, for some reason it just didn't click with me. For some reason, I was just kind of fixated with like, wow, this Cronenberg really likes his sexual themes.
Yes, he does. That he does. But yeah, for me, I mean, I enjoy The Crazies quite a bit, George Romero, and this one it felt like it had kind of that vibe a bit. What about you, Tanya? Is there maybe a bit of a Crazies vibe with this?
Yeah, it's been such a long time since I've seen that movie that I don't really remember enough to
sure
make a judgment. I do feel like, I mean, there were some elements, you know, like, let's take care of it. And don't they at one point say, you know, like, the best thing to do is just kill everybody or something like that?
Yeah. At one point, they said, because they thought at first it did have to do with rabies, hence that's where the title Rabid came from. And yeah, at one point, after they give shots to the cops, because the boyfriend is trying to get back to his girlfriend, who he doesn't realize she's in town infecting people, and he gets quarantined, and they have the cop that shoots him, and they're like, he got the shots. He was the first one that got the shots. It's like almost the cure is to shoot them is almost as good as trying to give them antidote, basically. And yeah, and they go ahead.
And then don't they instill some sort of like either curfew or military control or something sort of like that? Martial law, right?
Yeah, they incur martial law, and they just start shooting people because the boyfriend gets his car gets attacked by a crazy and an infected, excuse me, and yeah, they just shoot the guy. There's a sniper sitting on, and then they got the guys come by and they collect the body and just toss it in the bin.
Well, you know, there is a point where one of the characters calls one of them a crazy.
That's true.
One of the crazies came after something like that. I don't remember the exact line.
Yeah, you're right. There is a line. So I'm just wondering, because the crazies did come out in just a few years before this, it makes me wonder if there was a bit of influence from Romero.
I think there was, yeah.
I'm thinking so too, just because of the vibe and the feel, and you know, the folks that are infected, we realize it really travels, because we get the one doctor who is helping out the boyfriend, who goes to visit his wife at home. And you know, Tanya, what'd you think about this scene later on when the infection spread through, I believe it's Montreal now it's gotten to, and he goes visit his wife, and he goes into the kids' room.
Oh yeah, I had forgotten when I watched it again for the podcast. I had forgotten what happened there, and I was like, "Does he find her? Does he find what exactly what was going on?" And it actually got me again. I was like, "Oh." You know, because when he walks in, and then the blood is dripping from the tube at the bottom.
Yeah, it's dripping from like the toy box or something, or from the crib. Yeah,
from I think the changing table or something.
Yeah, that's what it was. Yeah,
and then you're like, oh, and then and it's one of those like leave it up to your imagination to make it even more gruesome kind of moments. And it got me again.
She popped out of the closet. Yeah, this scene. It's like, okay, it is dark in that, and you're going, okay, so she's going about, you know, infecting people. Fine, most of these guys, she's infecting her scummy. You know, it doesn't really kind of hit you, but this scene really is kind of dark and gruesome. It like, you know, I mean, up until now, yeah, it's got some serious themes and such, but you don't really. This was one of those where it was like a serious horror moment, like suspenseful and dramatic and dark. Cara, what'd you think about this sequence where he goes and finds basically just the blood on the changing table, and then his wife pops out of the closet?
I mean, to me, the setup makes sense. The fact that he's a parent, the natural instinct to protect the offspring. So it makes sense that he went up there when he didn't really notice anyone in the house. But it really wasn't too much a surprise to me that the mother would have done what she did, because they were the only two people in the house whenever whatever infection it is would have kicked in.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. For me, it was dark, and you know, having a kid as well this time around watching it, I'm like, oh man, that's just a little extra gruesome. But yeah, I loved how he left it to your imagination. You don't really see. He doesn't give you a baby corpse, you know. He doesn't go there, which I like. I sometimes I think less is more, especially with horror, and then especially when you're dealing with kid deaths, which Cronenberg
definitely a taboo.
Yeah. And Cronenberg's, he's not shy away from involving kids, but he does seem to have at least a little bit of nuance to it, to where it's saying, yeah, I'm not going to show you a kid get beheaded or anything or crushed or anything. So you guys are good there. And Kara, what'd you think of the zombies, the infected, their symptoms and their makeup and that, and what did you think about that? How did you think that looked, and did it feel like it kind of fit the what caused the infection? Did that kind of fit their design, basically what they came up with for these infected?
It seemed a bit off to me, kind of like they went, I guess, the Euro zombie route with like the green goo, and I don't know. It was just it definitely was a gross out, which is what it was meant to do, but it just seemed a little bit off that you have this vampiric element and then you've got zombies or ghouls that are thrown in. It's just, it threw me off a little, but then you see all the salivating and it's like, you're gross. Go away.
Especially when you're trapped in a packed subway car. And the lady just starts foaming. You're just like, oh man. Tanya, how'd you feel about the design and the zombies and the infection from what it's caused? Did it seem fitting, or did it seem kind of off a bit to you?
Well, I felt like it was very different, but I also felt like it was trying to tell you it was different. Like she was how they mentioned like the typhoid Mary of the disease, the sort of instigator carrier. And then it was like she's creating these other infected people, but they're not like her. They're not, and also in control. They lose control, and they eventually die. I think one of the characters mentions that.
Yeah, if they don't feed or attack someone, if they lock them up, they get into a coma and eventually die, I think it is.
Yeah, so I think that the differences was sort of by design, so that you see it's a very different situation that what she's passing on than what she is. Sort of like making her the leader. I don't know how to put that, but like she's the main thing, and she's creating these like kind of parasitic ghoul things.
It's almost like a residual. It's not an actual, almost direct, for lack of a better term, descendant from whatever it is that is causing her to do this. It's not like a descendant, like she's making more of the same. It's more like this is the after effects, residual of what she does, and it's just completely different than what she's suffering from. So you actually have two creepy things going on in this film with them. So yeah, and then it takes that interesting turn as we get near the end. I mean, she's infected most of the city. She finally catches up with her boyfriend, where right after she offs her best friend, which she didn't want to do. So she decides to lock herself in a room with a guy who hit on her in the lobby. I mean, crepes. It's like she can't go anywhere. And she locks herself in a room with this guy to prove that she's not the cause of the infection, but she's proven wrong. And Kara, how'd you feel about this sequence at the end of basically how Rose meets her demise? Is it a little unexpected, the direction they take, and what'd you think about that?
I actually like the way they went with it, because you definitely do have that sense of denial or doubt, even though she knows what she's been doing all this time. But it also reminds me to a degree of, I guess, like the Wolfman, how she's a victim of circumstance. She didn't choose to become this way. It just happened due to some side effect from her surgery. So she's just getting by the best way she can. And I think she was just hoping for the best, but eventually she just becomes her own victim in a way as well, just because she didn't want to heed anyone's warnings, and she just very much wanted to believe, well, I'm not the cause of this.
Do you think maybe subconsciously she realized it and she maybe did this on purpose, knowing that it was probably going to kill her?
I want to say it's possible. It's kind of like that whole, well, I can't stop. It has to be stopped for me. And I don't know, kind of like a weird serial killer mentality. At some point, even they want to get caught because they can't stop.
Oh yeah, that's an excellent comparison. Yeah, serial killer, because in kind of a way she is a serial killer in this. So yeah, that's an excellent comparison. Tanya, what about you? How'd you feel about this kind of ending of Rose and her justification for what she does? Do you think it was maybe subconscious because she knew what would happen, or?
Yeah, I agree with all that. And I do think on some level she understood what was going on.
Mhm.
And on some level it might have been she was willing to sacrifice herself to stop it. And I think, when she was on the phone, he says to her, "This is suicide," and she doesn't say anything back because
Right.
she kind of knows. But I think that's like some level. I think there's another level of denial as well going
Mhm.
on at the same time. Um, so yeah, it's interesting. I find her character interesting. I find the aspect of her character really interesting throughout, how she does have like an innocent quality to it, whether it is a, whether it is naivete or denial. There's
Mhm.
a part of her that feels like, oh, I'm fine, I'm doing fine. Although I think that is some deeper level that kind of knows what's going on.
Right. Either she's not accepting it or is in denial. Because yeah, I think she is after the second victim. I think because that victim is the one that's on the poster, is the one that actually she shoves in the freezer. The woman from the hot tub. Um, After that person, I think she realizes kind of what she is, but um, maybe she does the disconnect a little bit to try to not feel guilty of what she's done. Because not everyone she penetrates, she kills. So, maybe there's a little less guilt there with it. But yeah, you're right. Her character is interesting, and she's got that duality with it, which adds an interesting layer for her character, who's not just a person going around. She's not just a blood sucking freak, basically, which you could get in a film like this. So yeah, and then I thought it was just interesting how there's the infection going on, and the very end, again, the spoiler room, folks. At the very end, we have her she's dead, and they just toss her in the garbage.
It's
I'm
gotten
like,
that bad they're just throwing people away now.
right? So the infection hasn't been put in control. It's actually spread probably, and this is the real world now. And now the person who we followed through this whole thing is just kind of tossed away with the trash. I thought that was just an interesting way to end this. Not expected at all until she locked herself in a room. Then you know what's going to happen. But uh, though it makes you wonder, Tanya, how'd she get out there by the trash?
Hmm.
Because she died.
Thought of that.
She died in the room.
Right.
So how did she get carried out there? Did someone just dispose of the body out there? I
Maybe that's
mean,
like the new kind. Like garbage collection also includes looking around in all the apartments, finding the dead bodies and just tossing them.
they had to make the garbage chutes bigger to throw the bodies down there.
Yeah.
Maybe that could be.
Just toss them out the window, and the guys downstairs pick it up.
Well, she's piled with the rest of the garbage, so that could
That's
be.
true.
I don't know. Kara, what do you think? How do you think she may have gotten down there? Do you think someone just tossed her down there like they've been tossing away garbage now that the infection seems to be common?
I had kind of thought that, kind of like when you put Christmas trees out by the curb or something, but I I like how they leave it open to interpretation, considering the fact that she's the originator of all of this. I mean, to some degree, maybe after getting attacked, maybe it just didn't. Maybe she was just able to fend it off a little bit, and she was able to actually just run down there, and she just probably just died down there, just trying to escape.
Right. Yeah, that's true. Yeah, because we don't actually have her completely dead. We just hear her scream on the phone and getting attacked, but we don't know exactly what happens. We just find her dead on the street, which, um, yeah, that's just some imagery right there. And she played dead well, I thought. But yeah, this is a really interesting film, and it could, I think this could definitely fit within the same realm of Shivers in the same universe almost.
Mm.
It'd be interesting to see, because I bet you could probably, since they both involve medical practices, but doctors anyway, you could, I bet you'd probably tie these together, especially considering how Shivers kinds of ends. Uh, I wonder, there probably is some kind of fanfic out there that's tied these two together. I wouldn't doubt it, but so I was wondering. I know we talked about a number of things tonight with the film, but I was wondering if there was something with the film you maybe wanted to discuss with the group, or had a topic or something you wanted to bring up. So Tanya, we'll start with you. What did you have something maybe that struck you with this film or whatnot that you maybe wanted to bring up or talk about?
Yeah, well, I mean, I've noticed in Cronenberg films, there's like a lot of them have this sort of mad scientist aspect to it. Like you just mentioned, there's like a medical thing happening in a lot of his films. And it definitely struck me that this opens in a plastic surgery center where it's sort of like this resort. Obviously people are well off that go there. They make jokes about, coming there several times kind of thing.
Right.
And then the bandages all over. And at first I had really strong feelings about that. And now I'm not, now I'm like wondering what all is going on around that. But just wondering if you two have any thoughts about that in particular. Like, what do you think that's all about? The plastic surgery part? What is that trying to say in connection to the film?
Oh, I like that. Cara, what do you think?
That's actually pretty similar to what I wanted to bring up. Is I like how they had this subtle foreshadowing at the beginning, because you have you have two of the patients outside. They're bandaged up and they're mummy-like, so it's already kind of like the hospital's already a chamber of horrors before all hell breaks loose. So I don't know. It's kind of like, I guess, to a degree, like the ugliness of people wanting to modify themselves against the necessity of certain types of procedures in order to actually help a person. So it's kind of like this fine line in between, to where it can either go really, really wrong, or it can work out okay.
Yeah, and I think that does work, because we have people at the clinic who are voluntarily changing themselves, either because they want to personally, or like the one woman who I felt bad for, who they say, "Oh, you're back again with the nose," and she's talking about either her boyfriend or husband who said he didn't like her nose, so because it was too much like his.
I think it was the father had said that.
Or was her father?
I think she said her father would send her there to.
Okay, I didn't know if it was her husband or father. All I know is I'm like, wow, damn, you're gonna go under the knife again just because he says your nose is too similar for like the third time.
Yeah.
So there's a statement there about it, and yeah, there's people there. I mean, the one guy who has the jogging suit that says "jogging kills," which I did dig that. But you're right; these are people that are upper class. They can afford it. I mean, you get the one guy in the lobby who, when they bring in Rose, who's all burnt up in that from the motorcycle accident, he goes, "Oh my God." He's like, "Do you think they could have put a sheet over her?" I'm like, dude. So these are upper class people. And yeah, I think it's interesting to where you have the woman who wasn't wanting to change end up getting plastic surgery and having this horrific thing happen to her, this change. Yet everybody else there has had this procedure done a number of times and nothing's happened. But it is a hallway of horrors. And yeah, I think he's making maybe a little bit of a connection of, these things are random. Some people can have this procedure done all the time, but the one time that someone else has it done, it could go completely wrong. And this was during the rise, I think, of plastic surgery, because it was huge in the 80s. I mean, that was the subject of a number of horror films and such were plastic surgery. So I think it has a correlation a bit in there with possibly with class and with image and sexuality too, maybe in some respect. But it is interesting. It opens with the plastic surgery place, which they're talking about franchising. If you remember the conversation they have in the beginning, they're talking about opening more clinics across the country. So, yeah, it is interesting how that would tie into the theme. And I think Cronenberg just has something against science or medicine, one of the two. I'm starting to think so, because it's really becoming this recurring theme as we're exploring these, and comes up later too, especially in The Fly. So I don't know what he's got against science, but I happen to like science. But so, Kara, you said your topic was kind of similar.
Well, that's pretty much what I was just kind of thinking, is just like the whole, like you said, some people were voluntarily having procedures done, but there's like that whole combination of how things can either turn out well, or then you've got those botched procedures, and that's just a very extreme case of when things go wrong.
A very extreme case. I don't think many people have gotten blood-sucking appendages them, which, I always kind of wondered how that occurred, because they don't fully go into the explanation outside of the procedure is supposed to make the skin grafts mimic the area around them, so I just wonder, Cara, what do you think may have caused it? Is just a mutant a malpractice, something went awry with surgery, or is there something more going on here with why this occurred to her?
On that, I'm really not too sure. I mean, to me, it just kind of seemed very unclear on how this whole skin grafting thing went wrong, and all of a sudden she's got a chick penis and she's attacking people.
Because she needs to suck their blood. So Shivers was a little more about the zombie film, and this is more about his vampire film, maybe. Which I'm wondering if that's what we're going now with these. Tanya, what do you think? Maybe because the follow up to this is he soon comes out with, which what we're going to talk about next month is The Brood. So is Cronenberg going through classic monsters and doing a little bit of variation on them?
I have heard that as an interpretation actually already. That people say, definitely they say Shivers was sort of a spin, I guess, on the zombie genre,
right,
and that Rabid is a spin on the vampire idea. Which I could see that definitely. But if that is what was in his mind, it's a definite spin on. It's not, straight up zombie, straight up vampire at all. It's definitely body horror. It's got some of that mad scientist stuff, and it's got like parasitic quality to it as well.
right.
And, but yeah, I think it could definitely be inspired by that.
How about you, Kara? Do you feel maybe there's some inspiration here from those classic monsters from, with Shivers and with Rabid here?
Well, with this one, I was still leaning more towards that whole Wolfman comparison.
Oh, sure,
just
yeah.
the whole victim of circumstance. But I did see with Shivers, just like mentioned earlier, just kind of like the whole body snatchers theme. So yeah, I can definitely see how certain elements were maybe not necessarily borrowed but played upon.
Right. Given with a little bit of extra sexual spin that Cronenberg likes to do.
Sexual spin.
A sexual spin. No pun intended, but uh, so so I guess we'll tie this up a little bit then, and just your final thought with Rabid, and would you recommend it to someone, Caro?
I would definitely say it's well worth the watch. And for me, it was my introduction for Cronenberg. So I would say just because it's a little more, at least in my opinion, it's a little more mellow. I think it's a good way to ease in if you don't know what to expect or what you're in for.
It is a little bit more mainstream compared to his previous, especially his first one. Oof. But yeah, especially that one and Shivers. So, Tanya, how about you? What would you say? Would you recommend it? And your final thought with the original Rabid?
I would. I really like this film a lot. It's not for me like Shivers is one of my favorites. But it's not that, but I do really like it. I like how it is told in the same kind of simple way as Shivers, not as the the scope, but it's just simply talking about the virus.
Mhm.
I like how it's done in that way. I really like Marilyn Chambers. I thought she was great in this, and I kind of like the little twists on things that we haven't really ever seen before. So yeah, I would definitely recommend it.
Yeah, and I would too, especially it's a good introduction Cronenberg film. There are some twists in here, and people may say, "Oh, well, this has been done before." I'm like, "No, this was done after." It's like when you watch these older films, I think some people miss the point that, "Oh, well, I've seen this before." I'm like, "Yeah, but this is where it started, man." This is where all those horror directors after this got inspired from, and I think some people lose that occasionally. And now, before we close out for the night, Tanya, I hope you don't mind me asking. I know we talked a little bit before the show, but you had the chance because there is the remake, and I was hoping to actually have the remake to put it on the show, talk about it on the show, but it's been kind of pushed out till January 2020 now. But you had a chance to visit the remake set that the Soska sisters are doing their Rabid remake on. And would you be able to tell us a little bit about that? Maybe of the impression you got of the type of story that they're planning on telling versus what this original one is?
Yeah, I definitely could talk about that. So I went to Canada, got to see a set. It was I think it was one of the later scenes. It had been one of the later scenes, and it was one of the larger scenes. So it was cool to be there with all the different moving parts. I was there as a journalist, and there was about I think 8 or 9 of us, and we were there all day. I mean, we were there from 10 in the morning to like 5 at night or something like that. We were there for a long time, kind of documenting what was going on. And it was cool because we all got along really well and we all kind of bonded. And it was kind of like, if it was the Breakfast Club, but every single one of us was the Ali Sheedy character. And we had a lot of fun, and we were able to see a little bit of behind the scenes, not a whole lot, but definitely a lot of one scene, which was really cool. It's a larger scene. From what I gather, I believe I'm correct on this, but I haven't seen the film yet. From what I gather, I feel like it's going to be kind of like a remake, kind of like how the Suspiria remake was. It's not the same. It's like the same elements and similar ideas and similar characters, but it's different and larger and more like of a companion piece than an actual just a remake of the story. And that's kind of how I gather this is going to be. So I'm pretty excited to see that. I know that it's going to be less of a story of just the virus and more of a story of Rose and her world with the virus in it or whatever it is in it. And I know there's going to be, from what I get from some of the photos and stuff too, there's going to be, the accident and reconstructive surgery and all that as well. And I've seen some stills that look like it's really paying homage to the original movie, but it looks like it's in a different context. So I thought that was cool too. I know that, talking to the actors, talking to the staff, because I know that they all put a lot into this film and they're all really excited about it and they're all working really well together. So that was really cool to see. There's Tristan Risk was there. I worked with her. She's really great. She talked about playing a couple different characters. So that's going to be, which I think involved prosthetics and things. I didn't get to see all of that, but I know there's going to be prosthetics and creature effects. So it is going to be a different movie. And I believe, if I'm saying this correctly, that they did actually send the script to David Cronenberg to get his stamp of approval kind of thing. If I'm remembering that correctly. I know they did seek out his approval because they just wanted to make sure that he was okay with everything they were doing. And so I'm really excited about it. It's going to be a totally different film, but using the same elements. So I'm interested to see what they're going to do with that.
And that I think is the correct way to approach a film like this. And it was the way, I think, with Suspiria too, though people maybe had a problem with a reimagining. But I think when you're remaking some of these cult classics like this, you have to take that approach, because if you're just going to do a straight up remake, you're going to probably run into a lot more friction with people. So that has me excited that it's kind of in a reimagining of it. So I guess we'll close out the night with just a quick question. Cara, does that kind of make you more interested in maybe seeing a Rabid remake? And do you think reimagining, if they're going to redo a story from one of these cult classics, is that the better way to go versus trying to do maybe a more direct from original script remake?
I always felt that it's best to go a different route, especially because you have those people who are reluctant, where they're just fans of the film and they're like, no, don't do this and don't do that. And my best example that I can think of is the Cat People remake. I mean, that's essentially an entirely different film. It's just borrows the title, but I think it's better when they go off their own direction and do something completely different, but borrow elements. Just that way some people don't feel like, well, you ruined my favorite film, and so on and so forth, which I think is kind of funny because people always forget, well, you still have the original if you don't like the remake.
Yeah, that comes up a number of times during our podcasts, especially Mr. Shearer. He's brought that up too, to where, and we take that stance here on the show that if you really want that movie, it's still on your shelf. It didn't change because this movie came out. It didn't sneak into your DVD copy or your Blu-ray and change the contents of your movie if you still like that. So yeah, and I'm for the reimagining too. I think if you're going to do a remake, bring something new to the table. Don't do like that. The one that stands out for me that I really despise, the Psycho shot-for-shot remake.
Yeah, that was basically a modern day play. Everything was exact, even the dialogue.
Yeah, except until you get to the key famous horror scene in the world in the shower, and then he decides to take some artistic liberty. And yeah, then you're like, oh, come on, really? now you decide to change something? I like reimagining. That's why I actually think the remake, quote unquote, remake of The Crazies is just as good as the original, if not better, because whereas the original tells a story a lot from the lab and where the doctor was in that, The Crazies shows you everything else that was happening in the town or the area when the outbreak happened. So, I actually like, outside of maybe the last few minutes of that remake, I liked it because that was a reimagining. I think if you're going to go through the steps of remaking something, bring something new. Don't just give me the same as before, because I'll just want to watch the original.
Right.
Tanya, are you the same way? Kind of, do you like the reimaginings maybe a little more than the direct remakes?
I do, because I feel like they work as companion pieces. Like they work side by side, and one isn't like, I don't know, copying the other. I mean, I've seen movies that are very similar, like the different Shadowlands movies about
Right.
C.S. Lewis, but that's based on a play. I mean, it's a little bit different. Or like older films from the 40s, they would kind of redo them every couple of years, but that was before we had, like streaming or even DVDs, or whatever. You couldn't like watch them again, so they would just make them again. So it's a little different because it becomes sort of, why bother at this point? If you can buy the DVD or if you can stream the original, why even bother doing one that's, so similar, but maybe doesn't have some of the things that you love about the original. So I do like these sort of reimagining, or taking it from the view, point of view, changing that a little bit slightly, because then I think it gives you a companion piece, and it makes it kind of fun, kind of interesting, and not something that might, leave out
Right.
something that you enjoyed, but then
Yeah. Yeah. Well, it doesn't kind of just remind you of the original, so it
right,
makes you want to watch the original again just
right.
because. And yeah, so definitely thank you for a little bit of the insight on the Rabid remake. I'm very excited for it and interesting to see what they do with that, what they've done with that story. It looks like different. I love the cast. I mean, Tristan Risk is always fun. Um, she definitely is a interesting. She takes some interesting roles and always puts on a great performance. And the Soskas have it's been interesting to watch them move up from dead hooker in a trunk
Mhm.
to now doing this, project plus their other side projects. So yeah.
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 And Laura Vandervert plays Rose in this
Mhm.
newer one, and she looked amazing on set in the costumes, and she has a real passion for this project, and I think it's going to be, from what I saw, I think that the whole thing is going to be great. What I did see was great, and I think the rest of it's going to be as well. So I can't wait to see it.
Cool. Well, me neither. And when it does show, we'll probably do an episode on it. So, because I definitely am curious to see their approach, and not only that, but how your audience is going to take it, because the internet is a vicious, vicious beast. So we'll wrap it up tonight, and now this is where I give my fantastic panel the license to shill. So, Kara, why don't you go ahead? Where can people find you at?
I mostly do horror film reviews over on YouTube. You can find me at youtube.com/horror retrospective. Right now, I'm mostly just doing a lot of holiday themed stuff. So I'm hoping to have something out for April Fool's Day. But that's mostly what I'm doing right now.
Cool. Are you covering April Fools? The movie, the original, the '80s one.
I've done the original '80s
Mhm.
one. I've done the remake as well. I've done Slaughter High. So I've worked my way through there. I'm starting to get creative with it now. Like, well, what can fit this theme now?
Oh, well, definitely look forward to seeing that on the channel. And thank you again for being on the show, and appreciate it. And Tanya, how about you? Where can they find your stuff at?
TanyaAtomic.com. We're working on the site, but it does have links to all my socials. I'm basically Tanya Atomic, TONJIA Atomic, on everything that I'm on. So you can just search that too. MonusReturns.com is one of my films. And working on a film called 333 Illuminati, spelled like Nadia did something bad. That is coming out, I think, October, but you can see the short version online now
Oh, cool. So
on
yeah,
YouTube's.
awesome. On the YouTubes. So
Yeah.
check that out. And if you go to specialmarkproductions.com and you scroll down to the bottom, you will find friends of Special Mark Productions, where you find links to these talented individuals and their stuff. So make sure you check that out, folks. I hope you enjoyed our another journey to Cronenberg. And I guess one more thing we'll do, because we did it with the last two, is if there's one thing you take as you leave Cronenberg tonight with you about Rabid Shivers, yeah. If there's one thing as you leave Cronenberg tonight that you take with you with Rabid, what would it be, Tanya?
Don't be a creeper.
There you go. I like that. Kara, how about you? One thing when you're leaving Cronenberg that you're going to take with you?
Plastic surgery is not your friend.
There you go. I love it. Thank you very much. And yeah, folks, now we'll just say goodnight, everyone.
Night.
Good night.
All right. Well, thank you very much, ladies.
Thank
I
you,
appreciate
Mark.
it. This was a fun discussion. Yeah, it makes a great companion piece to Shivers. So I'm glad I was able to get you folks back for both.
Yeah.
So this was cool. And yeah, I've been excited about the Rabid project. So looking forward to that. And I'll have to check out the short Illuminati. Were you involved in that as well, Tanya, the short?
Yes.
Okay.
It's for the blood drive PSA that the Oscars do every year.
Mm-hmm.
And Michelle Nesk, who I made I don't know if you saw Just a Prick, but I did that last year.
Yeah.
So we did it again. Like we co-directed and co-wrote and everything again. Last time Michelle had the initial idea. So we kind of were working on that together, Michelle's project. But this time it was totally like we both sat down, we both came up with it together, we both did everything together, and it was like a real world immersive where we were traveling and we improved our characters, and Deborah Lamb is in it. She plays our mom, and I really like it. I'm really excited about this project.
Awesome.
I think it came out better than I expected it to.
Sure.
And we have a feature version of it that's going to come out. We're talking October. Everything's shot. We just haven't had time to do post yet.
Sure.
So.
What? No time to do post? What are you talking about? I can't imagine why. So, yeah. Kara, did you see Us at all?
I haven't. I really don't keep up with the new stuff too much. I don't even know what it's about.
You're more of a classics type horror.
Yeah,
right?
I stick to my retro stuff. Plus, what's going on now, I'll probably watch it 5 years from now when it's old.
Well, there you go. Let the hype die down, and then that helps with the experience. I think sometimes with it. Tanya, did you see Us?
Not yet. I really want to. I really enjoyed Get Out, and I just love Jordan Peele anyway. Like I think he's so clever, whatever he's doing. So I just see it.
I just find it hilarious that everybody's like, oh, they know him for comedy, and you find out he's just this super huge horror nerd, like major horror nerd. It's like, wow, even for an interview, he wore the same thing that Jack Torrance wore in The Shining for one of his interviews in Us. But they didn't say anything, but someone did the side by side comparison. They're like, holy crap, Jordan Peele wears it better than Jack.
Oh my gosh, that's so funny.
Yeah, so
that's so funny.
Yeah, I didn't get to see Prodigy yet, but this year for horror has been interesting so far. So, but we'll have to see. But Car, have you watched a lot of Hammer horror?
I've seen a few here and there. Like I worked my way through. Oh gosh, I can't remember the actor's name right now, but all of the Frankenstein films that they put out.
Oh sure, okay. Lee was Dracula.
Yeah,
Cushing and Helsing.
Peter Cushing.
Cushing. There you go. Yeah.
Yeah.
Peter Cushing. Oh, I love that. I've got a film called Torture Garden. I don't know if you ever heard of it. It's an old film. It's an anthology horror film, and it basically is a film that has Peter Cushing, Jack Palance, Burgess Meredith in it. Which is why I wanted it. I'm like, holy crap. It's like Burgess, Jack Palance, and Peter Cushing in a horror movie? What? But it's a fun one. If you get a chance, try to seek it out, Cara. I think you'd like it. It's kind of a Tales from the Cryptish, because Burgess Meredith, who I knew as the Penguin, he plays the tour guide of this wax museum that's a house of horrors, and that's called the Torture Garden. And so they go to the different stations, the wax museum stations, and he gives a story, and Jack Palance is there too, and then he has a story. And I recommend it. It's interesting, but it's from like the 60s, I think. So it's just the cast is what drew me to it. That's what happens a lot of times with those classic films, is I'll just see who the cast is. That's why I love The Raven. Have you seen that one, Tanya? The Raven?
A long time ago. Is that Vincent Price?
Vincent Price. You have Vincent Price. You have a young Jack Nicholson. You have Peter Lorre. You've got Boris Karloff, and it's directed by Roger Corman. So,
yeah, I have seen that. It's been a long time, though.
Yeah, my wife got it for me on DVD. That's out of print. She found it on eBay, and I'm like, it's a double feature along with I think it's the Circus of Terrors or something, I think it is, that's also got them in it. But Kara, have you seen the Roger Corman The Raven?
I want to say it sounds familiar, but I could be wrong. I don't know if that's the one with the opening scene where Jack Nicholson's on the beach, like I don't know if he just passes out, or he's like some sort of a military guy, or maybe I'm way off.
Oh no, actually no, this is a one set. It's stars Vincent Price. He basically plays a character from Edgar Allan Poe's poem, The Raven. And it's a comedy, and it's a parody, and he ends up going to the castle searching for his lost Lenore. And it's hilarious. If you can find it somewhere, I don't know if it's on streaming somewhere, but it is great. The fact you see a really young Jack Nicholson in it, with Vincent Price and Boris Karloff. It's just, yeah. Though poor Boris Karloff was looking a little worse for wear at that point. But anyway, I don't want to keep you. I know you folks are very busy, so I appreciate you coming out tonight. Yeah, thank you for being on the show.
Thanks for having us.
You bet. And we're doing The Brood next. So
nice.
So if you guys are interested, Kara, I'll send you a link. April's going to be a little thin for us as far as shows go. Okay. But if you want to be on the next Cronenberg one, we're doing The Brood. So
I'd love to. I've seen that one before, but honestly, I'm just grateful that you keep welcoming me back, because it's I think it's just awesome what you do, and it's always a fun time.
Oh, well, thank you. We appreciate you having you. You've got great insight, and I'm, you're always welcome to come back. Yeah, and I'd love to have you on the Brood episode. So I'll let you know. It'll probably be near the end of April. When we're getting closer to that time, I'll let you know, just to reach out if you can be on it. But if you can, you're on. So consider yourself on it. So.
Okay.
So, all right, ladies. Well, thank you very much. And
thank you. Nice talking to you both.
Always a pleasure. We'll talk to you later.
All right. Bye-bye.
All right. Good night.